He was known across the entire town. Some called him the bridge keeper. Others called him the madman of Oka. He sat every day by the old bridge that separated the main road from the market. Rain or sun, he was there, barefoot, dust covered, with hair like tangled ropes. People avoided him. Some crossed the road when they saw him ahead. The few who ever went near only dropped leftovers. Stale bread, half-finished moi, or cold rice in plastic bowls. But the elders of Auka, they knew him. They never laughed. They never went near either, because they knew the story. And it was a story that no one dared speak aloud. That silence gave the children permission to mock. And the two who did it the most were Obinna and Amarachi. Every afternoon, they would go near the bridge, sometimes with sticks, other times with stones, always with laughter. "Madman, how's your kingdom today?" Obinna would shout. Amarachi would follow, tossing a pebble close to his feet. "He thinks he's the king of the gutter. Look at him." The madman never chased them. He only looked at them, long and hard, as if waiting for something. But the elders saw it all. They would shake their heads. Some would say, "Stop it. Don't do that. Leave him alone." "Why?" Obinna once asked. "He's just a madman." An old man with grey eyes replied, "If only you knew who he is." "So, who is he?" "Ask your mother. It's not everything an elder knows that should be said." They asked many times. But each time, their mother would brush it aside. "That man? He's nobody. Just someone whose head is not correct. Don't go near him. I don't like you playing by that bridge." But the elders said you know something. Those elders talk too much. You people should stop listening to them. Go and do your chores. And because they believed her, the children returned to the bridge. One Wednesday evening, just before the rain, they found him singing to himself. His legs were in the water. His hands were covered in mud. Obinna picked up a stone and aimed. Amarachi giggled. "Let's see if he'll dance today." The stone hit the water beside him. He didn't move. Obinna threw another. This one grazed his arm. The madman turned slowly, not angry, not scared, just quiet. Then he said, "I will not chase you, because your mother never told you the truth." They paused. Amarachi tilted her head. "What truth?" He didn't answer. He just stared at her, and then turned back to the water. That night, they asked their mother again, "Mommy, what's the truth?" "That madman said you know something." She was cutting vegetables. Her hand slowed. Then she laughed. Too quickly. "That man talks nonsense. Madness has made him forget himself. You two are letting him get into your head. He probably says that to everyone." Obinna frowned. "But the elders said to ask you." "I said stop it. You should be reading your books, not chasing madmen around. Let me hear one more word about that man, and you'll see what I'll do." They believed her, at least for a while. But deep down, something was shifting. Because the madman wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He was speaking. And it sounded like he knew them. So many questions. So little truth. What was the truth? What were the elders hiding? And what did it have to do with their mother? No one knew, until the day it finally happened. The sun was angry that day. It sat high above the roofs and poured fire on the street. The air was dry, and dust danced in the wind. Amarachi stood by the gate, holding a silver bucket filled with water. Sweat ran down her forehead like tiny rivers. Then she heard a knock, slow, weak, almost like a whisper. Knock, knock. She frowned and turned toward the gate. Outside stood a man. His hair was dirty and long. His beard looked like it had never seen a comb. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, and his trousers were brown with dust. He looked like someone the world had forgotten. "Who is that?" Amarachi shouted. The man didn't answer. He just looked at her with tired eyes. "Madman! Go away!" Amarachi screamed again, her voice full of disgust. She lifted the bucket and threw the cold water at him. The water hit him hard. Splash! He staggered back, shivering as the cold ran through his bones. His lips shook, but he didn't speak. Obina, Amarachi's younger brother, rushed out from the house. He was tall and playful, always laughing at people. When he saw the man, he burst out laughing. "Ah, Amarachi, you poured water on him?" Obina said, grinning. "Good. He keeps coming here like this is his home." He walked closer to the gate and pushed the man hard on the chest. "Go and meet your people, dirty madman." The man stumbled and fell to the ground. His elbow scraped the rough cement, but he didn't shout. He just lay there, breathing heavily, holding on to an old brown briefcase like it was the only thing keeping him alive. The street boys nearby laughed louder. One of them shouted from a kiosk, "That madman has come again, oh. He will soon begin to talk to the trees." Everyone laughed, but the man didn't. He tried to get up. His hands trembled. His lips moved like he wanted to say something. Then, with a voice that sounded like the wind passing through dry leaves, he whispered, "Amarachi, you did this to me?" Amarachi froze. Her hands dropped to her side. The sound of her name from his mouth hit her heart like thunder. "What did you say?" she asked quietly, but the man didn't answer. His body shook. His breath came out slowly, weakly, like it was running out. His fingers loosened around the briefcase. The old bag fell open. Papers scattered on the ground. Some were white, others yellow with age. Obina bent down, still smiling at first. "See this madman," he muttered, picking up one of the papers. But when he looked closely, his smile vanished. He held up an old photograph. His hand trembled. "Amarachi," he called softly, his voice suddenly different. "Scared." She turned. "What is it?" Obina walked closer and handed her the photo. Amarachi looked at it, and her heart stopped. It was a family photo. A man, a woman, and two small children. The children were them, Amarachi and Obina. The woman was their mother, and the man standing beside her looked exactly like the madman lying on the ground. The air around them went quiet. The laughter stopped. Even the street boys went silent. Amarachi's mouth opened, but no words came out. She felt her knees grow weak. Her fingers trembled as she held the picture. "How?" she whispered. The madman groaned softly, his eyes half open, his lips moving like he wanted to speak again. But no sound came. The photo slipped from Amarachi's hand and fell beside the briefcase. For the first time, Obina didn't laugh. He just stood still, staring at the man on the ground, the man who looked like their father. The same father their mother said was long dead. The same father they had never seen again. The sun suddenly hid behind a cloud, and the cold wind moved through the street. Something strange had just begun. Amarachi's hands were shaking so hard that the picture almost slipped from her fingers. Her eyes stayed fixed on it. The man in the photo, the man on the ground, they looked the same eyes, the same face. "This can't be true," she whispered, her voice breaking like thin glass. The madman lay weak on the floor. His chest rose slowly. his lips moving as if they wanted to speak but couldn't. Obina knelt beside him. Amarachi, he's hurt, he said quickly. We can't just leave him here. Let's take him to the hospital. Amarachi hesitated. Her heart felt tight. But what if... Let's just go, Obina shouted, fear in his eyes. Together, they lifted the man gently. His body was light, like someone who hadn't eaten for days. His head fell on Amarachi's shoulder. His smell, old, bitter, and sad, filled her nose. Still, she didn't let go. They placed him in the back seat of their mother's car. The old briefcase sat beside him. Obina started the engine. The car shook as he stepped on the pedal. The dusty road stretched before them. Amarachi sat in the back, holding the man's arm to keep him steady. He opened his eyes weakly. His lips trembled. Amarachi, he murmured, you did this to me. Amarachi froze. Her name again. How did he know her? Her throat tightened. What do you mean? She asked softly. But he didn't answer. Obina looked through the mirror. He's talking again? Yes, Amarachi whispered. He said my name. Again, the car moved faster, the sound of the tires echoing on the rough road. Amarachi's hands clutched the picture tightly to her chest. Tears rolled down her face. When they reached the hospital gate, Obina honked loudly. Nurses came running. What happened? One asked. He fell, Obina said quickly. Please help him. He's hurt badly. They rushed with a stretcher, lifted the man, and carried him inside. His hand still clung weakly to the old briefcase. Amarachi tried to follow, but the nurse stopped her at the door. Wait here, please. She nodded and sat on the cold bench outside. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts louder than the noise around her. She opened her hand again and looked at the picture. The same picture that now felt like a mirror to her heart. Her father. The man in the photo was her father. The same man her mother had sworn was dead many years ago. Her lips trembled. Mama said he died, she whispered to herself. So why is he here? Inside, she could hear the faint sound of doctors talking, machines beeping. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her heart beating fast. The truth was beginning to open its eyes. The clock on the hospital wall ticked slowly. Amarachi and Obina sat side by side, silent, waiting. The air smelled of medicine and floor polish. Every few minutes, Amarachi looked toward the ward door, hoping someone would come out and say something. Finally, the door opened. A doctor stepped out, his white coat stained faintly with iodine. He removed his gloves and looked at them. He's alive, the doctor said gently, but very weak. Amarachi's breath escaped in a rush. Thank God, she whispered, placing her hand on her chest. Obina sighed too. So, he'll be fine? The doctor nodded slowly. He just needs food, rest, and care. But he looked at his clipboard again. While we were treating him, he kept calling a name. Amarachi leaned forward quickly. A name? What name? The doctor flipped a page, reading. Then he looked up. Alice. Both Amarachi and Obina froze. Their eyes met. Their faces turned pale. Alice? Amarachi repeated softly. The doctor nodded. Yes. He kept saying it over and over. Alice, forgive me. Alice, don't run. Who is Alice? Amarachi couldn't speak. Her lips trembled. Obina swallowed hard. That's our mother's name. The doctor blinked, surprised. Your mother? Amarachi nodded slowly, her eyes wide. Yes, Alice Mazi. But how does he know her? Silence filled the hallway. The sound of someone coughing echoed from another ward. Amarachi looked at Obina, whispering, It means he knows us. Obina shook his head, confused. No, that's not possible. Mom said our father died when we were small. Maybe this man just. Before he could finish, a nurse approached, holding the old brown briefcase. Excuse me, she said. This belonged to him. We thought you might want to keep it safe. She handed it to Amarachi and walked away. Amarachi placed it on her lap and opened it slowly. Inside were crumpled papers, a few old envelopes, and a worn-out ID card. She picked up the card. The edges were torn, but the writing was still clear. Engineer Benjamin Marzi. Amarachi gasped softly. Her throat went dry. Our father's name, she whispered. Obina leaned closer, staring at the card. His voice was barely a breath. But he's dead, right? Amarachi shook her head weakly. Mama said so. She said he died years ago. The doctor looked at them, puzzled. What are you two saying? Amarachi didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the name. Her fingers touched the card again, tracing the letters. It was real. The name was real. The man inside that ward was not just a stranger. The doctor cleared his throat. He's awake now, he said. He's asking for his family. Amarachi's heart jumped. Obina's hands clenched. His family? Amarachi repeated. Yes, the doctor said. He said he wants to see his children. The air grew still. Amarachi stood up slowly. Her knees felt weak. Can we see him? She asked. The doctor nodded. Follow me. Amarachi looked at Obina. Their eyes met, full of fear, full of questions. Without a word, they followed the doctor down the quiet corridor. The truth was waiting, just behind the next door. The ward was quiet. The light above the bed flickered softly, painting the room in pale yellow. The smell of medicine floated in the air. Amarachi and Obina stepped in slowly, their shoes making no sound on the white floor. The man lay still on the bed. His arm was tied in a white bandage, resting gently on his chest. Tubes ran beside him, and his breath came slow, like wind through dry leaves. His beard had grown wild, his face pale but calm. When he heard the door open, his eyes turned slowly, and then a faint smile appeared on his face. Amarachi, Obina, he whispered, you've grown. Amarachi froze. Obina looked around, confused. He frowned and took a step closer. Who are you? He asked. The man's lips trembled as he spoke. I am your father. The words hung in the air like thunder that refused to fade. Amarachi blinked. Her hands shook. No, she said quickly, shaking her head. Our father is dead. The man nodded slowly, his eyes tired but sure. That's what your mother told you, he said softly. But I am alive. Obina stepped back, his voice low and trembling. You can't be. The man coughed, his whole body shaking with the sound. When he spoke again, his voice was weak, like something broken trying to heal. They destroyed me, he said. Your mother and her friends. Amarachi's heart pounded. Destroyed you? Why would she do that? He turned his head slightly toward her, his eyes filled with sadness. Because of money, he whispered, and because she was afraid. Amarachi frowned, confused. Afraid of what? He looked at her for a long time before speaking again. Of losing everything. Of losing you both. He paused, his eyes glistening with tears. But she wasn't alone, he continued, his voice trembling with anger and pain. Someone helped her. Obina leaned closer. Who? The man's lips tightened. He took a deep breath and said slowly, Your uncle, my own brother. The room fell silent. The sound of the monitor beside him was the only thing that spoke. Beep, beep, beep. Amarachi's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know whether to cry or scream. Obina stared at the man, still trying to believe his words. You're saying Uncle Emeka did this? Our uncle? The man nodded weakly. Yes, he wanted what was mine. The company, the house, everything. He turned your mother against me. He told her lies until she believed I was her enemy. Amarachi's throat ached. But Mama wouldn't do that, she whispered, tears falling. The man looked away. She already did, he said quietly. But the truth always comes back home. He coughed again, closing his eyes for a moment. Amarachi moved closer and touched his hand gently. It was warm but trembling. She stared at him, her voice breaking. If you're really our father, then where have you been all these years? He didn't answer. His breath came slower. His eyes stared at the ceiling like he was watching something far away, something only he could see. And when he spoke again, his voice was almost a whisper. I was locked away, forgotten, but not gone. Amarachi's tears fell freely now. She looked at Obina, who stood silent, lost between anger and confusion. The man opened his eyes again and looked at them one more time. The truth will find you, he said faintly, even if it has to crawl through fire. Then his eyes closed, and the room went quiet again. The rain had started outside, gentle and slow, tapping softly against the glass window of the ward. Amarachi sat close to the bed, her eyes never leaving the man who called himself their father. Obina stood by the door, arms folded, his heart fighting between doubt and fear. The doctor walked in quietly, clipboard in hand. He needs rest, he said. You can talk later. But the man's eyes opened again. No, he said weakly, waving his hand. Let me finish. Sir, please, the doctor began. Benjamin turned his head slowly. No more silence, he said. They kept me quiet for years. I must speak now. His voice cracked, but his words were sharp. He wanted my company, he said slowly, his eyes drifting toward the ceiling. My brother, Emeka. He told your mother to sign papers, or they would hurt you both. Amarachi gasped and covered her mouth. What? Obina moved closer. What do you mean hurt us? Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. He threatened her. He said if she didn't sign, they'd take you away. Kill one, cripple the other. She was scared, so she did what they wanted. She signed every paper, gave him everything. The doctor tried again. Sir, please, not now. But Benjamin kept going, his voice breaking like an old door in the wind. After that, they made her believe I was mad. They took me to a psychiatric home, locked me there for years. I screamed, I begged, but no one listened. Amarachi's tears fell fast. Oh God, she whispered. How could she believe that? Obina's voice shook. Why didn't you come back for us? Benjamin sighed, his eyes closing for a moment. When I escaped, he said softly, no one believed me anymore. The world had already taken her side. To them, I was just a madman talking to the wind. Amarachi held his hand gently. Does Mom know you're alive? He nodded slowly. Yes, he whispered. She knows. Amarachi's lips parted. Then why hasn't she come? He turned his face toward the window. The rain outside was falling harder now, washing the glass like tears. She will come, he said faintly, because the truth always calls its owner. The room grew quiet again. The doctor stepped closer, checking the monitor beside the bed. Benjamin's eyes stayed on the rain. Don't be afraid when it starts, he murmured. The storm has waited long enough. The beeping sound beside him slowed down. His hand slipped gently from Amarachi's grip. Papa? she whispered. But his eyes were closed, his face calm. The doctor placed a hand on Amarachi's shoulder. He's not gone, he said softly. He's just asleep. Amarachi sat still, her heart heavy, her eyes wet. The truth had begun to burn, and it was only the beginning. The rain had stopped by the time Amarachi and Obina got home. The sky was grey, and the air smelled of wet dust. They walked quietly into the compound, their hearts still heavy from what they had just heard at the hospital. Their mother, Alice, stood at the door, arms folded tightly across her chest. She had been pacing for hours, waiting. Her eyes were sharp, her voice louder than usual. "Where have you two been?" she asked, her tone cutting through the air. Amarachi and Obina glanced at each other. No one wanted to speak first. Obina finally said, "We went to the hospital." Alice frowned, stepping closer. "Hospital? For what?" Amarachi hesitated. Her voice came out small. "For the man you poured water on, the one at the gate." Alice's eyes widened. "You took that madman to the hospital." "Yes," Amarachi said. "He was hurt. He could have died." Alice's hand went to her chest. She took a slow breath. "You two are foolish," she said sharply. "That man is dangerous. You should never have gone near him." Obina raised his voice a little. "We couldn't just leave him there, Mum." He looked half dead. Alice turned away and laughed. But it wasn't the kind of laugh that came from joy. It was short, sharp, and shaky, like someone laughing to hide fear. "Your father?" she repeated, forcing another laugh. "That madman? Don't be foolish." Amarachi didn't laugh. Her voice was soft but heavy. "He called you, Mom. He said your name." Alice stopped suddenly. Her laughter died. The whole room went silent. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to pause. She turned around slowly, her eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" Amarachi's fingers trembled as she spoke. "He called you Alice. He said your name before he fainted." For a moment, no one moved. Alice's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her hands shook. She looked from Amarachi to Obina, her eyes darting like a trapped bird. "That's not possible," she said finally, her voice low. "He doesn't know me." Obina frowned. "But he said your name, Mum. How could he know it?" Alice didn't answer. She turned her face away, staring at the wall like she was trying to find air. "Mum," Amarachi said softly, stepping closer. "Who is he?" Alice didn't move. Her throat moved slowly, like she was swallowing something painful. "I don't know him," she said quickly. "He's just a madman roaming the streets." But her voice was shaking. Amarachi watched her mother's eyes. They weren't angry anymore. They were scared. The silence that followed was deep. Amarachi whispered, "Mum, what are you hiding?" Alice turned to face her children, her face pale. For a second, her mouth opened, as if she wanted to speak, but she stopped herself. "Go to bed," she said finally, her voice cold again. "We'll talk tomorrow." Then she walked past them into her room and shut the door. The sound of the lock clicked softly, but to Amarachi, it sounded like the closing of a secret too heavy to carry. She looked at Obina. "Did you see her face?" she whispered. Obina nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "She's scared." Outside, thunder rolled far away in the sky, a warning of the storm that was yet to come. The night was heavy and quiet. The rain had stopped, but drops still clung to the windows like little eyes watching. Amarachi sat in the living room, the old brown briefcase on her lap. Her fingers trembled as she opened it slowly. The papers inside smelled of dust and time. Some were folded, others torn. There were photographs, letters, and documents with stamps. One photo caught her eye, her father, smiling beside a company sign that read, Mazi Construction Limited. Her throat tightened. She carried the briefcase into the sitting room and dropped it on the table with a dull sound. The paper spilled across the surface, sliding like secrets escaping from hiding. Alice came out of her room, her wrapper tied tightly around her chest. Her eyes narrowed. What's all this? She asked, her voice sharp. Amarachi didn't answer. She just stared at her. Obina spoke instead. They belonged to him, he said quietly. The man from the hospital. Alice stopped walking. What? Amarachi pointed to the papers. He said you helped them take his company. Alice froze. Her face went pale. Stop talking nonsense, she snapped, but her voice trembled. Obina's eyes didn't move from her. Mom, he said you were scared they'd hurt us. He said Uncle Emeka forced you to sign at the mention of that name. Alice's shoulders fell. The anger in her face melted into something softer. Guilt. She sat down slowly, her hands shaking. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. I didn't want to, she whispered, her voice breaking. Your uncle, he threatened to kill you both. Amarachi's heart skipped. Uncle Emeka? She asked in disbelief. Alice nodded weakly. Yes, he came to this house one night with two men. They had guns. He said if I didn't sign the documents, they'd make me watch while they hurt you. Obina clenched his fists. So, you gave him everything? I had no choice, she said. I thought if I did, he'd let us live. Amarachi's eyes filled with tears. He said you helped them call Daddy mad. Is that true? Alice covered her face with both hands. I didn't know what else to do. He made me say it. He told everyone your father lost his mind. I signed the papers and watched them take him away. I thought it was only for a short time, but he never came back. The room went still. Only the soft sound of the wall clock filled the air. Amarachi stepped closer, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us the truth? Her mother looked up at her with red, tired eyes. Because once you lie, she said, you can't stop. One lie becomes another, and before you know it, the truth is buried too deep to reach. She looked at the photo on the table, the same one Amarachi had found. Her lips quivered. I thought he was dead, she whispered. I told myself it was easier to believe that than to face what I'd done. Amarachi sank into a chair, her chest rising and falling fast. Mom, you destroyed him. Alice nodded slowly, tears falling like rain. And I destroyed myself too. The lights flickered. Outside, thunder grumbled softly in the distance, like a warning that the past wasn't done speaking yet. Morning came with heavy rain. Amarachi woke up early and looked for Obina. He was packing his things. She called softly, Obina? No answer. She walked to his room and found him packing a small bag. His face looked serious, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Where are you going, Chi? Why, Chi? He didn't stop packing. I'm going back to the hospital. Amarachi frowned. Now? In this rain? Yes, he said quickly, zipping up his bag. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what he said last night. I need to see him again. I need to hear it one more time. Amarachi's voice was calm but firm. Then I'm coming too. They didn't speak again. They both dressed quickly and ran outside, covering their heads with a small umbrella. The rain poured heavily, but they didn't care. Their mother was still asleep, or at least they thought she was. The car splashed through puddles as Obina drove, the wipers fighting the storm. The road was slippery, and the rain made it hard to see. Amarachi sat beside him, clutching her hands together, her heart racing. When they finally reached the hospital, they ran through the entrance, soaked from the waist down. A nurse at the desk looked up and frowned. "You're looking for the man in Ward 6, right?" "Yes," Amarachi said quickly. "How is he?" The nurse's face changed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "He's gone." Amarachi blinked. "What do you mean gone?" The nurse shook her head. "He left before dawn. We don't know how. He was too weak to walk, but when we checked this morning, his bed was empty." Obina's mouth fell open. "That's not possible. He couldn't even lift his arm last night." The nurse looked down at her notes. The window was open, and his hospital gown was still on the bed. "We searched everywhere, the garden, the compound, but he's gone." Amarachi felt her knees grow weak. "Gone?" she whispered. "Yes," the nurse said, then held out a small brown notebook. "He left this behind." Amarachi took it slowly, her hands trembling. The notebook was old, the edges soft and worn. She opened it carefully. Inside, on the very first page, written in shaky handwriting, were just 6 words: "The truth always finds its way home." For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of rain hitting the windows filled the silence. Obina looked at Amarachi. "What does that mean?" She closed the notebook gently, her eyes wet. "It means he's gone to find Mom." Obina's breath caught. "Mom?" Amarachi nodded slowly. "He said last night that the truth calls its owner." Maybe it already has." They both turned toward the door. Outside, the storm still raged, but this time, the thunder didn't sound like anger. It sounded like footsteps, moving closer to home. The wind howled as Amarachi and Obina reached home. The rain still poured, slanting across the yard like sharp needles. When they drove through the gate, they noticed it was wide open. Obina frowned. "Mom never leaves the gate open," he said, stepping out quickly. They ran inside, water dripping from their clothes. The lights were still on, but the house felt cold, too quiet, too empty. "Mom!" Amarachi called out. Her voice echoed through the sitting room. "Mom!" No answer. Then Obina saw it, an envelope lying on the dining table. Their names were written on it in familiar handwriting. He picked it up slowly and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He read aloud, his voice trembling. "I'm going to make things right." "Don't follow me," Amarachi gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "She's gone to him," she whispered. "Or to Uncle Emeka." Obina's jaw tightened. "Then we're going after her." They didn't waste a second. Amarachi grabbed the car keys and they rushed back into the storm. The thunder boomed above, the lightning flashing across the road like broken glass. The drive was rough. The wipers couldn't fight the heavy rain fast enough. But Obina didn't slow down. Every turn, every splash of water felt like time slipping away. Finally, they reached the old Mazi construction yard, their father's company, long abandoned. The metal gate was open halfway, creaking in the wind. Amarachi pointed. "That's Mom's car," she said. It was parked just inside, lights off, door slightly open. They stepped into the building. The air smelled of rust, dust, and old secrets. Water dripped from the broken roof, forming small puddles on the concrete floor. They moved quietly down the hallway, following the faint sound of voices. Then, from inside one of the offices, they heard her. "Please," Alice begged. Her voice was shaking. "Let me go. I've done everything you asked." And another voice answered, cold, deep, and cruel. "You talk too much, Alice. You should have stayed quiet." Amarachi's eyes widened. She recognized that voice. Uncle Emeka, she whispered, her heart pounding. Obina clenched his fists. The storm outside roared louder, as if the sky itself was listening. Inside the room, something terrible was about to happen. The rain outside beat harder against the broken windows. Lightning flashed, lighting the dark office for a second. Through the half-open door, Amarachi saw him, Uncle Emeka, standing tall, his face hard and proud, a gun shining in his hand. Their mother knelt before him, her wrapper soaked, her eyes red and full of fear. "You destroyed him," Alice cried, her voice shaking. "You took everything from your own brother." Emeka's lips twisted into a smoke. "He was weak," he said coldly, "too righteous." "I did what had to be done." Amarachi's heart thumped fast. She leaned close to Obina and whispered, "Call the police." Obina nodded and stepped back quietly, pulling out his phone. His fingers shook as he dialed. Inside, Emeka raised the gun slowly, pointing it at their mother. "You should have kept your mouth shut," he said. "Now it's too late." "Stop!" Amarachi screamed. Emeka turned sharply, shocked to see them at the door. "Amarachi!" he shouted. "You followed her?" Before he could pull the trigger, Obina rushed in and slammed into him. The gun slipped from Emeka's hand and skidded across the wet floor. They struggled. Amarachi screamed for help as the two men fought, grunting, slipping, fists hitting walls. The rain outside sounded like drums beating for war. Then came the sound of sirens, loud and close. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. "Drop the weapon!" a voice shouted. The door burst open. Police officers stormed in, led by Inspector Olatunji. Emeka tried to run, but he slipped on the wet floor and fell hard. Two officers held him down. The inspector pointed firmly. "Emeka Mazi, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder." Alice fell to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Amarachi ran to her and knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around her trembling shoulders. "It's over, Mom," Amarachi whispered, her voice soft but sure. "It's over." Obina stood in the corner, breathing heavily, watching as the police handcuffed his uncle, the man who had destroyed their family. Outside, the thunder began to fade. The rain softened. For the first time in many years, peace was slowly finding its way home. The next morning, the sky was quiet. At the police station, Alice sat behind the bars. Her eyes were tired. When the officer opened the door, Amarachi and Obina walked in. The sound of their footsteps filled the small room. Alice lifted her head slowly and forced a faint smile. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to see your faces before they take me away." Amarachi's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't find words. Obina stepped forward, his voice shaking. "You made us hate our father," he said. Alice nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, "and I hate myself for it." Her hands trembled as she held the metal bars. "Fear made me do it," she said. "But greed kept me quiet. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting my own shame." Obina looked away, fighting his anger. "You let them destroy him," he said. "You stood by and watched." Alice's shoulders dropped. "I know," she whispered, "and every night I saw his face in my dreams. Every night I begged God for a second chance." She looked up at Amarachi, her eyes soft and broken. "Tell your father I'm sorry," she said. "Tell him. I remember everything I said the night they came for him." Amarachi's lips quivered. "We will," she said quietly. At that moment, Inspector Olatunji stepped into the room. "Time's up," he said gently. Alice stood. Her hands shook as she wiped her tears. The officer unlocked the gate and took her by the arm. As she walked past her children, Amarachi whispered, "Mom, we'll pray for you." Alice stopped for a moment, her back turned to them. "Don't pray for me," she said softly. "Pray for yourselves. The truth hurts before it heals." And then she walked down the long corridor, her footsteps fading like a sad song in the distance. Amarachi stood still, staring after her. Obina placed a hand on her shoulder. Neither of them spoke. The truth had set them free, but it had left behind chains that would take a lifetime to break. Weeks passed. The storm was gone, but its memory lingered in the air. The town couldn't stop talking. "They said the madman was her husband," one woman whispered in the market. "Yes," another replied, "and his own brother betrayed him." People shook their heads, sighed, and moved on. But for the Mazi family, life would never be the same. At the hospital garden, the air was calm. The flowers were blooming again. Benjamin sat on a wooden bench, dressed neatly in a clean shirt. His arm was still wrapped, but his face was peaceful, like a man who had finally made peace with the world. Amarachi walked toward him, carrying a small cup of tea. "You should drink this while it's still warm," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Thank you, my daughter." She sat beside him, watching the sunlight touch his face. "Dad," she said quietly, "you can come home now? The house is waiting." He chuckled weakly. "Home," he said, looking at the trees swaying gently. "Home is not just a place, Amarachi. Home is where peace lives." She looked down, then asked, "Do you forgive Mom?" He was silent for a long time. Then he lifted his eyes to the sky. "I already did," he said simply. "Forgiveness is not for her. It's for me, so I can breathe again." Just then, Obina appeared, holding a folded newspaper. "Dad," he said, "Uncle Emeka confessed." He told them everything. Benjamin nodded slowly. "The truth always walks in daylight," he said. "You can hide it for a while, but when it wakes, it shines brighter than lies." He looked across the garden and saw a little boy running with a paper kite. The wind caught it, lifting it higher into the blue sky. Benjamin smiled softly. "See that?" he said. "You can't stop the wind of truth. It will always rise again." Amarachi smiled too, her eyes warm. Her father reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph, the same one she had found that day at the gate. The edges were worn, but the faces still smiled back. He handed it to her gently. "Keep this," he said, "so you never forget. Lies bury love, but truth brings it back." Amarachi held the photo close to her chest. The wind brushed through her hair, carrying with it the scent of peace. As the evening sun began to set, the wind blew gently through Unity Street, the same street that once mocked a madman, now silent and calm. The people who once laughed at him now spoke his name with respect. And in that quiet town, beneath the golden sky, the Mazi family began to heal. Not with wealth, not with pride, but with truth. Moral of the story: truth may be buried under lies, but it never dies. Fear may silence a voice, but it cannot silence justice. Betrayal may win for a season, but forgiveness lasts forever. And as the sun set behind the quiet town, one question lingered in the air. When the truth finally returns home, will we have the courage to open the door? I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, Comment what you learned from the tale, share with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more African folk tales just like this one. Thank you.